Chapter 12. Parent. The skull fracture at age 2, which caused brain damage, should have kept her from a normal life and mile markers. Jo is the middle child of sorts in a family of 13 siblings. She now has 2 children of her own. Though growing up, her doctors told her she would never have children. The abuse from her mother was so extreme that the psychological scars drove her into a mental hospital. The doctors who worked with Jo assumed the worst about her case, medically and mentally. Physically, she would have poor mobility for the duration of her life. Speaking, walking, finishing school, marrying, or having children, the medical team emphasized was surely beyond her grasp. She went from her mother's house to the hospital, from the hospital to foster care, only to return to her mother's house where the cycle would begin yet again. As soon as the bones would mend, she would leave the hospital. The misery of such an existence was soothed only by the winsome sounds of classical music that the children's ward lovingly played. She knew this place as home, a time of convalescence, peace, and care. Jo had become a victim of child abuse at age 2. That is the first record of hospitalization, though potentially the hatred for this young child had started at a much earlier time, birth. You see, Jo is a twin. Her brother died weeks after their birth. The days when his stats would drop, Jo's would go up. When Jo's vitals dropped, his would rise. That was the delicate balance between their 2 worlds until the day the boy had no strength left to fight. His name was Richard. The loss of the boy goes back further than the death. The tale follows the trail of a woman born black and loved by a father. This father loses a wife. Father remarries a woman who can't stand the natural love and esteem between father and daughter, and makes the father choose between the daughter and herself. The father chooses the new wife. The new wife has charge of Jo's mother and repeatedly beats her to within an inch of her life. Eventually, she is sent packing. The road in search of healing for this torn and ragged womb of loss and abuse drives her to seek love anywhere she could get it. The year is 1919. In this community of souls struggling to stay alive and safe in the Carolinas, this time period keeps rules only for those of privilege. If you lose your father in the way Jo's mother did, the only hope for surviving is to keep the next man in your life happy no matter what it takes. There was one in particular. He had his own wife and family, but that hadn't stopped Jo's mother from loving him and trying to continue to make him proud of his offspring. Jo's mother had multiple births. There were 2 sets of twins before Jo and her twin were born. They too were lost, however, and Jo's mother couldn't forgive herself for not giving this man a boy to carry the suggestion of a family name one day. It is believed that when this male twin died, Jo got the brunt of all those hopes and dreams dashed against her tiny body. Her birth weight was just over a pound. As a few years passed by, most of the bones in her body had been broken. This must have been all Jo's mother had known as a young child herself. It was reported to the local authorities that Joe was thrown across a room and her head and face collided with a radiator. The medical teams warred through multiple surgeries but were not able to save the eye, so she lost it at age 13. During one of the final stays in psychiatric care, after about 5 years, Joe, age 21, woke up. Shock treatments for her severe depression and detachment from reality were administered regularly. Despite her tortured existence, she decided she had a dream, a goal, something to do with her days besides sitting by and being a victim for the rest of her life. She wanted to go back to school. She had known only warmth and kindness from the nursing staff. Her years at the children's ward gave her an idea. She wanted to become a nurse. The staff was overjoyed at this sudden awakening. They helped her go back to high school and graduate. Because of being moved repeatedly from foster home to foster home and then into hospitals, Joe had never been able to do well in school. The nurses helped her along the way to make it into medical training, not for nursing, but to be an EKG technician, reading monitors. She landed a job that took almost everything she had. She dealt with horrible supervisors and grueling hours, but in the end, she was able to stand tall on her own. The Altons home was one of the foster homes that had been dear to Joe. The Altons had no children of their own. They never made her and her sister and the other foster children sit in the hallway for meals like some of the other foster homes did. The Altons were stern but fair, loving in their own way. They had shown her much kindness. Joe would attend dinners at their house with other wards of the state who the Altons cared for. One of them was a young man named Nathan. In the beginning, she would see him only from a distance. Joe would see this scrawny young man with a huge appetite. She saw something in him that was different from the others. Perhaps they shared the same history in a way. Both broken, but Nathan didn't have the broken bones to show his scars of survival. He joined the Air Force as soon as he could. Whenever he was back in town on leave, he would take her out to dinner and catch a movie. He one day says, "Let's get married before it's too late." Joe wonders, "Why? I'm not pregnant." Nathan replies, "It's the world. Everything seems to be coming to an end. Everyone is going crazy. We should get married so we at least have each other no matter what comes." It's 1969 and the young couple have their lives ahead of them in order to repair whatever harm may have come to them from their bruised and eventful past. They make a start and find small joys wherever they come by them. The firstborn is a baby boy. He is his father's pride. Nathan loves the child and treasures him. The marriage sees some ups and downs, as all relationships do. Something, however, is amiss in this specific relationship, and Joe cannot put her finger on what it is. Could it be something from the past that has settled over Nathan and that he simply cannot get over? 4 years later, Joe is pregnant with another baby. There is no joy in the home by now, and this pregnancy is an unwanted one by Nathan. When are you going to get rid of that thing? He can be heard saying sneeringly on multiple occasions. Nathan works at a local hospital with hours all over the clock. The couple barely see each other anymore. Nathan grows more and more agitated with the thoughts of another child in the house, and one day his anger at a minor argument causes him to lunge at Jo and squeeze her from behind around her swollen belly, causing her to contract. In that instant, Jo knows she is having a girl. Someone to share the experience of pain, loss, and rejection. A partaker of wounds and sitting in the position of helper for the rest of Jo's life. All of this is known as a foregleam in the contractions. There is a simple purity in this thought, and so Jo instantly knows that to protect this child is her most necessary task. Something is amiss with this person, her husband. Something must be done about it. One evening in particular, Jo can't help herself. She walks in and sees Nathan laying on the sofa. "Nathan, why are you laying there like a woman?" she asks. Nathan simply looks at her and continues to watch television. Another time, she sees him with both hands resting primly over crossed legs. "Are you a homosexual?" Jo blurts. It was the last time they were ever in the same apartment. The year is 1982. Jo has never received help for this second child, as Nathan had technically left in 1980, simply dropping by every so often after months of no communication. He never contributed to the little girl's well-being in any way, leaving Jo to accomplish all the tasks associated with parenting her son and the small infant girl. She is a warrior of sorts, with necessity lending to the challenge of success. This she has learned long ago. Jo makes it through these hours, days, months, and years solely with God's help and the sheer willpower to never give up and never take the words "I can't" in her mouth. She raises these children against all odds and refused to let failure be an option for her family. Nathan dies of AIDS. The year is 1988. Jo decided to leave the big city and move to a more family-friendly environment. Greenville is the ideal choice. That's why when her son seems to be showing signs of rebellion, she is surprised. She honestly believed that this change to a new town is the most sound option for the children and herself. She now thinks only of her children and her need to care for them in the very best way possible. The boy is 15 when he punches Jo the first time. Jo falls back against a wall with a guttural yell. "How dare you raise your hand to me after all I've done for you? I only wanted the very best for you." The boy decides to leave home and puts himself in foster care, claiming unfair restrictions on his freedom. The state falls for it and honors his wishes to leave. He ends up living most of his life in want and on the streets. Jo has always done what is best for her children. The girl turned out a bit different, never too rebellious and never too far from home. Not for very long, that is. Jo sees her daughter marry and move around, and along the way, Jo has been able to go with her here and there for some of the adventures. The best is yet to come for Jo, though. The string of events in her life are many. Tie them around her fingers.